Eutin, Germany.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Mayor, members of the commission, my name is John Jostler, and I'm here tonight representing the Sister Cities Advisory Board. I want to thank you all for your collective support for this organization that this commission started about 22 years ago. As you know, we have 3 wonderful cities. Some of you participated in our first kind of official exchange with Eniotis Greece this summer. It was an exciting experience. The students from Hrvatska have come and gone from the summer, and tonight we're going to introduce you to the German students who arrived just Sunday. They had some airline issues, so they arrived here a little late. So that really means on Sunday they traveled for approximately 24 straight hours, which I could not do. Anyway, I want to thank you all very much for the support you give, and I do want to acknowledge a couple of people. Ken Albrecht, who's here, who's on our board, but also serves as the chair of the Friends of Eutin. And she doesn't know I'm going to introduce her, but we have a new German teacher in town. She has agreed to be the trip sponsor for next year, and she's dutiful. KU graduate with an advanced degree in German, Natalie Aaron, is here. And then I just want to introduce the German teacher who's here with the students, Rebecca Kebbel. She's been here before, had loved Lawrence enough. She came back to do it again, and then she's going to introduce you to the students. Thank you.
Well, good evening. So my name is Rebecca Kebbel. I'm working at the Weberschule in Eutin, and I understand that this exchange program has been going on since 1989. So since then, the students from our high schools have been able to visit each other and get to know life in the families and in the schools of the different countries. I've been here 2 years ago, and at that time there were some difficulties with the exchange program, and I'm so happy that now the exchange is taking place again from both sides, so that in June 10 American students visited Eutin and stayed in the families there, and I think made a lot of new friends. So coming to Lawrence now was a great experience, especially for the students, because they weren't coming to meet strangers, but they were coming to meet friends that they'd made. And I'd like to thank the people involved in the exchange program. So the Lawrence High Schools, Natalie, the people at Sister Cities, you, and most of all, the host families, because without them, this wouldn't be possible. So a great thank you to all of them. And now my students are going to introduce themselves to you.
Get the cane point. We'll be kind to you.
While the first student is coming here, I will point out an interesting metric. If you go back to the history of the Eutin-Lawrence relationship, add up these students as well as other students that have gone back and forth, and this includes the KU Summer Language Program, the business interns, the guitar orchestras, the students. This summer, we're exceeding 2,000 individual people that have traveled between these two cities. And I think it's a pretty remarkable record.
I'm Louise, and I'm the exchange partner of Emily, and we're going to the Free State High School, and I really like in Lawrence the weather because it's so sunny.
I'm Leah. I'm with Madison. I go to Free State High School, and I really like my host family and the people in America. They're very kind.
I'm Lisa. I'm staying at the Sturbans family, and I'm going to LHS, and I really like the school and the weather and my family. Yes.
I'm Eva Jonas. I'm staying with the Albrecht family. I go to Free State High School, and I like that the people here in America are so open and kind.
I'm Niklas Meiners. I'm staying with the Heel family, and I like the school and my family.
I'm Tom Nolte. I'm staying with the Soup Hoops, and I'm going to Free State High, and I like the weather and the food.
Must have been pretty cloudy weather over there this summer, huh?
My name is Lara Krümmel. I live with Lexi Adams. I go to Free State High School, and until now, I like almost everything here. It's really nice here.
My name is Johanna Rave. I'm staying with the Spies family, and I'm going to LHS, and I almost like everything here. It's great.
Hi, I'm Nele. I live at the Hacker family, and I go to Lawrence High School, and I'm very excited to be here.
I'm Lena, and I'm staying with Dayland, and I go to LHS, and I also like everything here.
Hi, my name is Nicholas. I'm staying with Thomas here for the next 3 weeks. I go to the LHS near in Lawrence. I think it's just amazing to be here. It's like everything is 10 times bigger than Germany.
And my name is Leonie Schröter. I stay with the Vogelsang family and go to Free State High School. And I think all here it's great, and I like the school and the students and my host family, and yes.
Well, that's great, and welcome to Lawrence, and we hope you have a good, productive time at Lawrence High School and Free State High School. So just as a note, the reason why I said this is a real interest to me is I was the mayor that signed the original agreement that struck the deal between Oiteen and Lawrence for our first sister city. So anyway, I'm happy to have done that, and I can look out and see that more than 2,000 people have benefited by that because of the years of dedication of the people who work for sister cities and all the volunteers and the host families. So to all of you, thank you very much. It's absolutely wonderful work you've done, and think how many wonderful friends we have across the seas because of that. So good job. All right, next on the agenda is to proclaim the week of September 16th through 22nd as Just Food Fight Hunger Week. Do we have someone from that organization here to receive the, Jeremy, please come. Yeah.
Well, not going to be as exciting as that, but nonetheless, we're doing a big push next week. We're calling it Fight Hunger Week. This will be our second annual, and we're very excited about the opportunity now to continue to feed those in Douglas County who are desperately in need of it. And we're now partnering with 42 agencies in our community. And during the month of August, we served through direct service 8,100 people. 40% of those were children under the age of 18. And through our partner agencies, served another 3,500. So the need is great. We're going to be out this week, this Sunday, at Free State High School, packaging 40,000 meals and distributing 16,000 of those to 1,000 families. And then the other 24,000 will be distributed to our partner agencies that day. And then we'll have folks standing at grocery stores throughout the rest of the week. And then it culminates kind of with our golf tournament next Friday. And we're pretty excited about it and just thankful for all of those who throw their support behind feeding folks who need it in this community. And I brought a shirt with me tonight that I'm going to give you, but please stop by our food bank. But our initiative for 2013 is Feed Just One. And the quote is from Mother Teresa: if you can't feed 100 people, then feed just one. So I'd like to present that to you, and with the promise that if you come by, we'll get a shirt your size, because this is a 3X. And it might be a little big for you. So,
I think that's your size, isn't it?
That's your shirt, isn't it?
Would you like me to read the proclamation this time? Whereas the City of Lawrence is proud to recognize Just Food, the food bank in Douglas County, in its continued innovative efforts to fight hunger and be a voice for those who are food insecure. And whereas on September 16th, 2012, United Way of Douglas County will be hosting their campaign and partnering with Just Food to package and distribute 40,000 meals to Douglas County residents and partner agencies. And whereas on September 21, 2012, Just Food's second annual charity golf classic presented by Knology and Dillon's will take place with all proceeds to feed Douglas County residents. And whereas monthly Just Food distributes food to nearly 10,000 through its food pantry and partner agency network. And whereas Just Food continues to live up to its mission to provide food to those who are food insecure while seeking to raise awareness and promote action to combat hunger in Douglas County. Now therefore I, Robert J. Shum, Mayor of the City of Lawrence, Kansas, do hereby proclaim September 16th through 22nd, 2012 to be Just Food Fight Hunger Week in the City of Lawrence and urge citizens to support Just Food's mission to fight hunger in Douglas County. Thank you very much.
Good job, Jeremy.
Good job. You're doing a good job. Okay, and next on the recognition portion of this is to proclaim the week of September 16th through 22nd as POW MIA Recognition Week.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Vern Russell, past commander of Post VFW 852. I'd like to thank you for this opportunity and to let everyone know of our citywide ceremony on Friday, September 21st at 6 p.m., and it'll be at our post home at 138 Alabama.
Okay. Would you like me to read this proclamation
Yes,
for you
please.
at this time?
Please.
Whereas the United States has been involved in many wars, and whereas evidence, documentation, and testimony continues to raise legitimate questions regarding final accountings for Americans missing in action or believed held as prisoners of war in foreign countries, and whereas the whereabouts and fates of those Americans who were last known alive in enemy hands have yet to be determined, and information concerning these men is being withheld from the American people, and whereas a full and accurate accounting still has not been made regarding more than 29 men from the state of Kansas, and whereas Congress has designated Friday, September 21st, 2012 as National POW MIA Recognition Day, now therefore I, Robert J. Shum, Mayor of the City of Lawrence, Kansas, do hereby proclaim the week of September 16th through 22nd, 2012 as POW MIA Recognition Week, and Friday, September 21st, 2012 as POW MIA Recognition Day in Lawrence, and ask all Kansans to pursue a final accounting of these Americans as a national priority by taking part in activities promoting awareness of this issue. All right. Next on the agenda is the consent agenda. All matters listed on the consent agenda are considered under one motion and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion on these items. If discussion is desired, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and will be considered separately. Are there any items on the consent agenda any member of the commission wish to remove?
Mayor, I have a question about item number 5 of staff, if I could, and it's just clarification on my part.
Okay. Is there any item on the consent agenda a member of the public wishes to remove for separate discussion or separate vote? Okay. Do you want to ask the question now, or do you want to take the vote?
It would be fine if I
Go
could.
ahead. Item number 5 for staff, please. Item number 5 is, let me read this.
Okay.
Adopt resolution number 6991, directing and ordering a public hearing on September 25th, 2012, concerning the advisability of constructing an additional parking level on a parking garage at 707 Vermont Street and other necessary and appropriate improvements.
Dave, question about whether or not a conflict of interest on my part may exist because of being a property owner that's in this district. And at what point can I or can I not participate in the discussion of this?
Commissioner, thank you for the question. There would be no conflict because you are a property owner. You stand to get a benefit, but you also stand to be special assessed to have your property. I think we've got, I don't know how many tracks that we have in the downtown area. It's in the district. there's 281, 300 approximate tracks, so your one or two or several holdings aren't that many. Keep in mind what we have here is we're setting the public hearing date. You'll take public comment at that time. You may or may not take action at that time. You may or may not approve the resolution at that time. If you do approve the resolution, then it's published. Then it's subject to a protest petition. If there's a successful protest petition, it kills the additional, it kills the benefit district. And then you also then receive the bids for the parking garage and the ad alternate, which will be the additional parking spaces, and you may choose at that time not to proceed with the project. So you've got multiple opportunities to indicate that you don't want, or you do want to proceed with the project. But your ownership of property within the benefit district is not considered a conflict of interest because of the process that we've laid out here.
And for the record, I hold property as well in the footprint of what would be considered for the special benefit district. Any other questions? Any member of the public wish to comment on this? Okay. Adding to the consent agenda this evening, we want to add the payroll in the amount of $1,901,185.12, as well as paying 295 vendors in the amount of $3,846,067.83. Is there a motion to accept the consent agenda with the claims as well?
So moved.
Amix, Cromwell. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carries 5-0. Next item is the city manager's report.
Mayor, members of the commission, a number of items to talk briefly on this evening. Commissioner Carter had asked questions about the building permit report. Appreciate that. We looked at it more aggressively, more extensively, and we did find a couple of errors in that and hopefully a further elaboration about that information. So I'd commend that to your reading, and as you have questions or concerns, we can respond to that. Scott's here as well and is familiar with the report. We did get a very good sales tax distribution in August. I even asked Ed to go back and look at it in a little bit more detail as well to make sure that those numbers were good, and they are. A lot of good retail activity there in the mid part of the summer. So that's good information, and we think we're on target to exceed that line item in the budget. Keep in mind, Commissioners, that when we adopted the 12 budget, we did know that we had at 100% expenditure level more expenditures than we did revenue. So it's helpful to have one revenue source performing strongly. We are underway with our outreach campaign for the trash cart transitions. You see a document that Megan put together that shows the various methods and means that we're going about and letting the public know about the cart. We've also got good staff here that's been working on this for a number of weeks. Appreciate all their efforts. We're getting comments back, questions back from the public. The inserts are now going through the rotation with the utility bills, and we're getting questions as well. And of course, we know that we're going to get a lot of questions when those trash carts show up in people's driveways and they haven't been informed about it. So we're trying to get the word out. A couple of stormwater projects to let you know about, kind of some before and after photos as well. Appreciate that work. One of these days it's going to rain, and we're going to need all this great stormwater work that we've invested in the community. So it's good to have that work underway. Different kind of water. This is we're going to be using some of the reclaimed water, the effluent, out of the treatment processes before we put it back into the river. We do some watering of particularly medians where we're going to be able to use this water. We can go into any number of different examples. The water that we put into the river is a lot cleaner than the water that we take out. It's been approved by all the appropriate regulatory bodies. It's probably more widely used in the Southwest, but reclaimed water is something that's certainly appropriate, and we want to be more knowledgeable about it. And one of the best ways to be more knowledgeable about it is to do it. So we're going to do that. I've also asked staff to look at the possibility of using some of the water that we get from our wells out on the farmland property. We currently pump that to farmers that are used for irrigation. That's a great benefit for us. hopefully a good benefit for them. But we might also want to be able to use that as well in some of our irrigation efforts in the community. And then to finalize the water theme, some awards that the utility department got. Be happy to respond to any questions or comments that you've got.
Questions for staff? Okay, thank you for your report. Next comes the regular agenda, and the first item on the regular agenda is to conduct a note and bond sale. Consider adopting City of Lawrence debt guidelines.
Ed's here to walk us through the note bond sale and
Mayor and Commissioners, today we conducted our note and bond sale. We actually had 3 separate auctions. One of them, we sold $24.4 million in notes, and then we sold 2 bonds, one for a little over $8 million and one for just under $3.6 million. Among those notes, of the $24.4 million, $18 million of that is for the new library. And on the $8 million issue, about $5.9 million of that represents new money. The rest of it's a refunding. The third issue we did was all of a refunding of some previous sales tax bonds. With that refunding, we've recognized about $475,000 in present value savings. So those auctions went real well today. The list of the new money projects were included in the memorandum I provided earlier. What we received today was 6 bids on the notes and then 7 bids on each of the bonds that we're proposing to issue. Of those, the best bid on for the notes was about 0.25%, and that went to Merrill Lynch. The 2012A bonds, Robert Baird provided the best rate on that, and that was 1.487%. And on the 212B issue, the low bid on that was Stifel Nicholas, and that was 0.578. So as part of the agenda item tonight, we ask that you accept those bids and award those to the low bids on those. And then there's a resolution to approve for the notes, and then there's resolutions and ordinances for each of the bond issues. And on the ordinances, we ask that those get adopted tonight on first and second reading. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Sounds like it went pretty well.
Went real good.
Saved $500,000.
This is the good side of things. The other side of it is when I go try to make
We're not making any
investments,
money, yeah.
it's hard to make a dime.
But we came out about $500,000 better.
Yes.
Good.
Ed, the guidelines, that we're being asked to consider as a second part of this, were the guidelines adjusted to reflect the new monies that are being created from these projects?
Well,
especially the
when I
general
set the guidelines are, at least the way I look at them is we're setting those up so that, they kind of are an early warning system, so that, they're reflecting if we get, what I would consider maybe too high a debt issue, it might, either cause increase in taxes at a later date or maybe a bond rating downgrade. None of these issues won't violate, either current guidelines or the proposed guidelines. They fit well within those.
Ed, you might reiterate, you mentioned the bond rating, get that confirmed as well.
Right, Moody's, we only get one rating on our bonds. Those come from Moody's. They confirmed our AA1, which is just one notch below the highest rating, which is AAA. And then they also rate our notes, and they rate our notes. It's a little bit different rating system. It's called a MIG-1, and that's the highest rating on the notes. And a big factor on the notes is the number of bidders that we get, because they always want to make sure there's a market for our bonds. And with 6 bids on the notes, that's one of the, and this is a larger note issue than we typically get. So there are some larger bidders that we may not typically get, but at the same time, some of the smaller bidders, like more of the regional banks, didn't bid on it because it was at that size. So that reflects well upon the marketability of our paper.
What else?
Do you mind if I ask another question about the guidelines?
Oh, go right ahead.
Ed, when we talk about the guidelines, and specifically as we look at the amount of net direct debt outstanding per population, and that increase going from $1,100 to $1,500 per capita. I guess my question is if that $1,100 is a, you know, a red flag, or to give us, you know, an initial warning that, you know, we might be getting close to that per capita income, and this doesn't, these bonds don't get us to that $1,100. Why the need for the change right now, or the increase?
Well, the definitions changed a little bit, so that when you're looking at the 1,100 and compared it to the proposed level, which I think is 1,500, it's not apples and oranges. There's some things that are included in the 1,500 limit that aren't included in 1,100. So they may or may not be comparable depending upon the makeup of that debt, but when I looked at developing that new guideline, those are kind of based upon some averages for AAA rated cities in Kansas. So right now, that on net direct debt per population, the AAA rated average in Kansas is a little over 1,600. So we're kind of below that level. So I think that's a comfort level, at least in terms of the rating agencies. But it's always, you know, something that you as commissioners have to be comfortable with as well.
The reason that I ask it is I've had quite a few questions about, you know, an increase from $1,100 to $1,500 and what appears to be, you know, 36% increase, 39% increase, whatever it is, and, you know, that per capita debt, you know, obligation that may exist. And you know, if we are remaining under the $1,100, why specifically is the need? And I think a better explanation, you know, is something that at least, you know, for me and maybe others,
right,
you know, to just understand why it's important at this time that we raise, you know, that debt limit.
Right. Yeah, and it really is based upon a change in definition. The new definition is a little bit broader and includes more issues than what the older definition did.
Questions? Thank you, Ed. Public comment?
Evening, gentlemen. I'm Bill Simons. I guess I wanted to come and express my concerns about raising the debt level. You know, we see on the news all the time the tremendous trouble we're having at the federal level with these battles over raising the debt ceiling for the nation, and our deficit in debt keeps rising, and I don't want to see the same happen in Lawrence. To me, it seems as though with the world and the national economy somewhat precarious, and the changing in the way revenues are coming into the state now after the lowering of sales tax and stuff, that we should be very careful. And I think that when you raise a debt ceiling, you may not be sitting as the commission a few years from now, but it invites people to think that they have money that they need to spend there. And I just think that we should learn from what we've seen, that we don't necessarily want to go down this road. And I appreciate Mike's comment that even with the new bonds, we're still under the present levels. So in light of this, I would encourage the commission at this time to table this, to give it more thought, bring it back at another time after there's, I think the public hasn't been adequately aware of what this actually is, that it is our debt ceiling, you know, for lack of a better term. I mean, it's the same. And I don't think most citizens want that to occur in our country. I don't know why they would want it to at our state or city level either. And as our population grows, we're continuing to get $1,100 more for each new citizen. So our money per population ratio stays the same. It's not like our population is growing and we're losing money. So I guess I had something more specific. Oh, that it does represent a 36% increase, which seems alarmingly high to me, especially now that I've heard that there is no need because of some situation we've gotten ourselves into. So I really consider it, under our present economic circumstances in this country, reckless and irresponsible to raise debt limits when there's no evidence that it's due to an economic crisis that we're facing. Thank you.
For the record, this was scheduled about 6 weeks ago, or 2 months ago, and we did defer it to Saturday more, so probably had 2 shots at it.
I want to make it clear, there is a statutory debt ceiling, Kansas state law, that establishes the amount of debt that we can issue. We are not altering that. We don't have the authority to alter that. We are well below that amount. This is not changing that amount. What this is changing are additional guidelines that we have imposed on ourselves, as Ed has indicated, as additional guidelines, additional policy, so that as we issue debt, we can put it up against a mark. And what we have found is that one of those marks is 10 years old and hasn't been adjusted for inflation, essentially, is the way I look at it. I fully agree with the comments about the federal government. You don't want to get me started on that. But I think we have been very strong fiscal stewards of that, whether it's external ratings provided by Moody's, whether it's the market that we went to today and had 6 and 7 bidders that look at our debt and our ability to pay. We do need at some point to adopt the guidelines, I believe, or make a decision in regard to that. Don't disagree with his comments about being cautious. I don't think that it's irresponsible to have additional guidelines way beyond the statutory cap and have something that makes sense and has been adjusted accordingly.
You indicated that the $1,500 cap versus the $1,100 cap has some different properties, and it's not apples and apples. Are these other matrix as well? Have the definition changed for some of those?
Yes, I don't have the information to directly respond to that, but that was one of the reasons why this exercise was kind of good. As Dave mentioned, it's been 10 years since we developed these guidelines, and our own debt policy itself hasn't changed. These are just some guidelines that I first developed about 10 years ago, and the City Commission reviewed those. But since then, the definitions and the ratios that Moody's looks at have changed. So what I attempted to do here was the ratios. Most of them are very similar, and that might be some of the cause for confusion, because you get debt per capita, but how you're defining that debt is different. Or you get debt per assessed valuation. Well, the definition of that net direct debt is different than what we're using before. So, for example, I think here, under the old definition, I don't think we would have included sales tax backed debt. Here we do, because the way we handle our sales tax debt, even though we pay it off by sales tax, we have sufficient capacity to pay it off with sales tax. Those funds are kind of commingled with general fund money, and could be used for general purposes as well. So under the old policy, we pulled those numbers out. Under the new guidelines, I should say, we leave those in, because Moody's in their definition say, we're going to count sales tax when we calculate the ratio.
Okay. Other questions for staff?
Can I
Thank you.
respond to that just briefly, since new
I want
information?
to see if anyone else wants to speak, please. Any other speakers? I'll give you another 2 minutes. I don't usually do that, but I'll listen to you.
I won't even take 2.
All right, please go to the microphone, sir.
I realize that we're well within our statutory limits from state law. That's not an issue. But if the state law led us to have $50 million per individual, does that mean we should go to $40 million just because we can do it? I would say no. As far as the Moody's ratings, we saw what good those were on our financial institutions and AIG several years ago. They meant nothing. And I would think that the chances of having a very strong Moody's rating, even possibly to AAA, might be better if we were at 1,100 than we were at 1,500. It shows how we were able to run a city so well, as fiscally soundly as we're doing with that kind of a limitation. I just think it leaves, once again, too many temptations for future commissions to take action knowing that they have that leeway. And also, it leaves the argument, if we get it up to 1,500 and don't even need it, 10 years from now, I can come back and say we need it to go to 2,000 because it hasn't been changed for 10 years. I just think in our present financial state in this country, we need to learn from what we're seeing around the world and in our own country and not take that kind of a step at this time when there's no sign that I've heard tonight that it's necessary to keep the city running. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments? Commission discussion?
I guess, Mayor, I would start. I thought this originated, I thought I had asked that we just revisit the guidelines themselves during one of our capital planning discussions. I don't think it's come as a necessity of anything that's happening, other than upon reading them, was wondering where we came up with them, how long since we had revisited them, what impact on these rates that we're currently and the rate environment might have on our debt expenses. And you know, so we've asked for the professional opinion of our staff. Moody's ratings are important. Yes, certain things fell down, but they have a big impact on the interest rate that we pay, which is a direct cost to taxpayers. So those ratings are important, whether or not Moody's knows what they're doing or not. The banks rely on them, I think, to an extent. So those are important, and it's important that we make sure we stay, that we're fiscally responsible to keep the highest ratings we possibly can. And I think it's important for us to know, what is the level to where we might start pushing that and to stay within that. It's not, nobody asked what's the most we could go spend so we can spend it, but literally we need to have on the books good professional opinion of what the appropriate debt guidelines are. And when you compare to, there's not going to be any more back and forth, sorry. When you compare to, say, Manhattan, or other like cities, we're really in great shape. I don't foresee us getting to that 1,500 level, but it's just good to know what a current accurate level is that we could be comfortable that our ratings wouldn't be sacrificed. So I appreciate the work done on this to help clarify it and answer a lot of questions for us.
Mayor Shaw.
Sir, you're out of order. You've been allowed to speak twice. You're out of order, sir. You may wait till the end of the meeting now, and you'll have 5 minutes under public comment. Sir, you're out of order. If you'll please be quiet. We're having the commission discussion right now. Anyone else?
One more question to Dave, if I could.
Okay.
Dave, you made a comment a second ago that we need to make a decision on this, if I understood that right. Your opinion, we need to raise this from 1,100 to 1,500?
I think it's good to have the guidelines. There's no legal requirement that you have it. I think we've presented it. I'd ask that you take action on it. I don't have a legal requirement for it. I think that there is value in paying attention to this more frequently than we did. Commissioner Carter's absolutely right. He brought it up during the budget discussion, and I think it's good that we look at it. Not that we want to change the guidelines all the time, but that we are continuing to mark our debt in regards to those guidelines. We do have a policy that every time we do issue debt, we'll look at it and mark what we've done according to those guidelines. So I don't have a legal requirement. I can't say, these are just policies. This is an internal guideline, an additional guideline that we have beyond the state law procedures in order to do it. There's no requirement that you act. I'd like some direction as to whether or not you want us to do additional work or you just want it to have it indefinitely tabled.
Yeah, I looked over all this information and feel like there's a couple of things that need to be brought to light. First of all, these guidelines, these metrics are really not very valuable if we don't update them and compare them to the cost of living today and what other Kansas municipalities are doing and what other cities of similar size are doing. The ratings that we receive are based on things that are really outside of our control from a bond rating standpoint. The fact that we live in a university town, which is both a positive and a negative. We have a relatively low average adjusted gross income. We have some things that we can do better that are completely separate from our current debt obligations and our policies that can improve our ratings, but are going to be difficult to raise. You know, I look at these numbers and see us in comparison to other Kansas cities and feel like we're in good hands. And I feel like it's silly to have a set of standards that are over 10 years old. You know, for me, it's a matter of creating a system to grade us based on the current economic conditions. And I think an adjustment to these policies are overdue and are necessary, whether or not the city manager thinks it's required. I think it's important for us to measure our financial policies in today's dollars and not ones that were reflective of 10 years ago. So for me, this is pretty straightforward. I think it's when you rate us against other municipalities, you use other similarly rated communities, and I think we have numbers that stack up, and I think these policies are sound. I agree that it's silly to create numbers that are artificially high if we don't plan on using it. Why would we do that? But we all understand that things change, and to ignore this, I think would be, you know, a worse situation than the outcome of us changing the numbers. So, in my opinion, we should move forward with establishing these guidelines if we can, and keep a close eye on it. I'm not so concerned about us using up our capability. I think we've done a good job, and I think other commissions in the future will do the same. These numbers are guidelines, and as City Commissioner pointed out, we're not changing the law. We're just trying to create some metrics that are useful in the future.
Other comments? Other comments?
Just one comment. I mean, as I went through all of this, I tried to go back after you and I talked yesterday, Dave, and looked at things like the valuation of real estate that we had, 10 years ago at the time that these figures were developed. And I understand, that there's been a tremendous increase in valuation of real property. There's been, increases, in the debt that the city's carrying. But at the same time, too, the debt's been managed very well. And in the discussion you and I had yesterday about the management in the last several years and how it's been handled, it's been very, very, very good. My only concern was, as I look at the per capita debt, if it's the $1,500, the $1,500 figure, or if there's another figure between $1,100 and $1,300 that we could use as being that red flag amount rather than going to the $1,500. I asked Dave that as a question. If it's something that's really not required, is it something the commission would be more comfortable with at, a figure of $1,300, and what effect does that have, or does that not meet any of the definition that Ed read, earlier in being able to make that change?
Yeah, again, I think it's just a guideline, and we're just asking staff for their professional opinion as far as how far we can go before impacting it. So I think it's just totally up to us to know that we'd certainly, if we ever got to that point or started getting to that point, or things changed enough, I'm sure staff would need to revisit our guidelines. But that's all I see it as, is not any kind of a target at all. But I'd want it to be accurate, and we've gotten their professional opinion now, so to write anything other than what that is, you know what I mean? I think the guidelines should be, unless we feel like Ed's mistaken on that, that our ratings could be impacted at a lower level or something, then I'd see revisiting it. But otherwise, as long as we feel comfortable that that's accurate, then I don't think I'd want to change what is his professional opinion as far as the guidelines, how far we could go before we impact our ratings and that sort of thing.
So then is our, question, Commissioner Carter, are our ratings going to be affected by changing that $1,500 amount to $1,300 or $1,250? I mean, I don't know. Is that what's going to happen here?
Our guidelines don't have any impact on anything. It's our reality of what we actually draw on that impacts it. And our guideline is just letting us know what, that level maximum could be.
So then
I'd
it's a
see.
comfort level by the commission.
I think so. Or by staff. I'm not questioning it, I guess,
Oh.
is what it comes down to. I think it sounds right, but.
Yeah, and other similarly rated communities have an average of 1,637, so we would still be below what other similarly rated Kansas communities have as an average. So I don't know how it would impact it. If anything, their numbers are probably going to go up.
I had an opportunity to sit down last year when the folks from Moody's came, and when they were reviewing our score, they actually came into the city and toured it and talked. There's a lot more than this. This is one little tiny piece of that, and again, it's about the reality and not a particular guideline, and that's the first thing that I've got. Another thing is, I've got a line of credit at my business too that I don't touch. But it's there in case I need it, and that in a lot of ways I see that this is an analogous situation here because we want to have the capacity, but we're accountable to the voters and to the people within our community to spend responsibly, and this body does a good job at that, and we've. Our rating shows that the outside world looks at what we've done and our capacity for spending and earning, and thinks that we've done a pretty good job too. So I think it is time to make a change in this to allow for inflation, and we have to keep current on this so that we have the capacity and that we have that line of credit ready if and when we might need it.
Well, as long as, and if I could, Mayor, as long as it's understood by this commission and by the public that, this amount here is simply a guideline. It's something that is to red flag us, to let us know that we're getting to a point, then I think that makes sense. As long as everybody understands that we're not looking for that next big deal out there, that we can use, this expanded capacity for debt to be able to, do a deal somehow, then I think that's fine. If we're using it as a tool of responsibility and spending, and that's what I hear everybody saying here, that is exactly what, that the public expects from us, and I appreciate the comments that you have. I don't have any problem, really, as we look at these guidelines, as long as that we're all saying the same thing, and that we want that warning system put in place that is going to help us all understand, the importance of wise expenditures of the public funds. So that's what this is, and I think that this has been a good discussion to be able to have that happen.
I guess the way that I've understood the guidelines is that I don't see them as a speed limit. It's more like a yield sign, and if necessary, we have to stop and ask questions about whether we can proceed. And I think that's, if we approach it that way, where as we make these debt commitments, and we know that these debt commitments come at different times. They don't all show up. We're doing debt for projects that have been around, for in some cases, for several years. Other projects we just have started this year. We're going to have other additional projects later on that we're probably going to have to go to the debt markets for. The example for that is the farmland projects that you've conceptually approved, but we've got to go forward on. And that's been included in our analysis. But as we go and we do that, we want to look at these guidelines, ask the questions, and then determine whether or not we want to proceed. It's not something that we have to reach. It's something that if we get close, we want to ask the right questions and see whether or not we want to proceed. And I think it's help. That's the way I would look at it. It's helpful in that manner. We've got a lot of very wise counsel, not only in Ed's office, but we use Springstead Financial Advisors and others to help us look at these things and look longer term, and for us to help and understand exactly what we want to do in the future.
What that reminds me of, kind of what I think prompted me to ask about it when you talk about timing, because I think that's really where I came from, was the timing of when projects happen can make that fluctuate, and it can be higher at certain times than others, and based on where rates are right now, the timing, what I was concerned about too is let's make sure that's a real current number and it's correct, because if it's 1,100 and let's just say from a timing standpoint, 2 years from now rates are still we can get money at 2%, and we're saying, well, we can't do this project now, that could be extremely costly compared to waiting and getting them at 5 or 6%. You know what I mean? Millions of dollars on a given project just based on the interest rate that we get. So to be able to just take advantage of timing, if in fact something like that were to come up in the future, just to be sure that we're able to capture rates, if in fact it meant multiple projects came together at one time. So.
Sorry. I am comfortable with the guidelines for all the reasons given thus far. I'm not going to repeat them all. So is there a motion on the floor? Let me ask staff a question here first. You need ordinance number 8789 and 8790, both readings tonight?
Yes.
And can we do that in one motion?
Yes, you can take, what we'd ask is that you adopt the resolution 6992, ordinance 8789, ordinance 8790 on first and second reading, and the resolution 6993, resolution 6994, all as one motion.
I'd like to make that motion as stated.
Okay. Cromwell?
Second.
Carter? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carries 5-0. And now entertain a motion to approve the debt guideline.
So moved.
Carter?
Second.
Cromwell? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carries 5-0. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is to conduct a public hearing regarding the sale of alcohol at the Color Run and consider adopting on first reading ordinance number 8788, allowing possession and consumption of alcohol on the public right-of-way. It's like we got trouble in River City.
Good evening, Commissioners. We've talked before about the Color Run coming up on October 6th. It's a Saturday afternoon. That race will be taking place. Organizers have asked for permission to have the sale and possession and consumption of alcohol on the 900 block of New Hampshire Street. Also, subsequent to my writing of this memo, they asked whether they could expand that to 9th Street, the 200 block of East 9th Street, just around the corner, depending on the size of the crowd that they end up with. They're currently, as of a couple days ago, at about 4,000 people registered. Just for comparison's sake, the half marathon that we've had before, one of our bigger events, was about 2,500 people. They expect, and Bob Sanders here and can correct me, but they expect to get up to around 10,000 participants. So the size of the crowd is unknown at this time, so they just want a little bit of flexibility to be able to expand that after party area if needed. So your action requested tonight is to hold the public hearing and then grant the distance limitation waiver and adopt the ordinance allowing possession and consumption on the right-of-way. Also attached in your agenda materials is a general update on the race, and I won't go through all of that, but Bob's here and can answer any questions that you might have about the race in general.
Okay. Questions for Jonathan? Okay, let's hear from Bob Sander. I want to find out who these crazy people are that want to spend good money to get color dye thrown
Hopefully
at
you'll
them.
be one of them, Mayor. But where we are, registration as of this afternoon, we're shade under 5,000. We're adding about 1,000 participants on a weekly basis. So so we're a few weeks away. So we might hit that 10. I think 8 is probably more realistic. We're excited, or at least I'm excited to host the Color Run, because typically Color Runs are, Lawrence would not fit the Color Run business plan because they go into communities that have at least a population of 1 million people. So I'm pleased to have, that I'm bringing the Color Run to Lawrence. I'm pleased that we're using part of downtown and East Lawrence Neighborhood Association. So once the run is over and the celebration, they'll have a place to go to patronize. And again, it's all about bringing people to town. I was trying to get a breakdown for you for tonight to give you an idea as far as local versus out of town participants, but I couldn't get that from the folks in Utah. So maybe I could come back with an update at a later time.
That'd be good information to have. So, Well, thanks, Bob. This is a good event for the city. Certainly will be a lot of fun. And there'll be a lot of color in this particular opportunity.
Bob, question, the parking plans, where's all these people to park?
Well, my advice to them is that they can warm up for the run by jogging downtown.
There we go.
Okay. I'm not going to advise that they use mass transit because, getting them back home if they're all colored up may not sit well with Bob Nugent. So I won't advocate that. So they as a cool down, they can jog back to wherever they came from. But parking will be an issue. There's no question. But we will do the best we can. I mean, people will find a place. Central Middle School. I mean, they'll have to park where it's legal to park and find a way to the start-finish line.
We love these challenges. They're great. Any other questions for staff? Anyone care to make a motion to approve ordinance number 8788? Oh, yes. We'll open the public hearing at this time. Moved second to open the public hearing. That was Dever Amix. All in favor say aye. Aye. The public hearing is open. Would any member of the public care to testify about this? Move to close. Cromwell, Dever second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carries 5-0. And now would you care to make a motion approving number 8788?
So moved.
Amix, Dever, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carries 5-0. Next item on the agenda is to reconsider the Comprehensive Planning Amendment, CPA 6509 to Horizon 2020, Chapter 14, to include the Northeast Sector Plan. Adopt on first reading. That would be ordinance number 8748.
Good evening, Commissioners. Dan Warner with the Planning Office. Going to talk to you again about the Northeast Sector Plan. This was previously before the City Commission approximately a year ago. This map is the previously approved future land use plan. I just want to point out a few things on here. This is the Grant Township area that's part of this planning area. It's about 10,000, what did I say? About 10,000 square miles. Is that right? No.
Sounds big.
Yeah. 10,000 acres. We've got the airport here in the middle. KU Field Station owns some property up here. The predominant future land use is agriculture, basically the predominant existing land use in that area. When we started this process about 3 years ago, we obviously received a lot of comments from folks that were interested in this project, but we also had some to consider in this plan. There are issues that promote urbanization of the area, and there are issues that promote not urbanizing the area. The issues that promote urbanization are its proximity to highways. You've got I-70 and 2459 and 2440. You have the airport here. The area is adjacent to the city. It's got some existing industrial uses already, and it's got flat terrain that is attractive to industrial users. Issues that don't promote urbanization would be the stormwater issues in North Lawrence. You've got floodplain in this area, class 1 and 2 soils, and then that flat terrain also is problematic for delivering sewer service. And then also importantly, this area on balance is growing quite a bit slower than other areas of the community. This area that's south and west of the airport is about 300 acres. That was really the focus of the issues that we've had in this plan. Right as it was previously approved, it's about 285 acres of industrial with about 15 acres of commercial. Real quick, the previous approval process, the plan was originally approved by the Planning Commission by a vote of 5-4 on September 20th of 2010. The County Commission considered that plan at a couple meetings in 2011 and ultimately returned the plan to the Planning Commission by a vote of 2-1 with some questions for the Planning Commission. And then this body reviewed the plan on August 9th of 2011 and also provided some questions to the Planning Commission. So the Planning Commission reconsidered the Northeast Sector Plan, they had a series of meetings beginning on December 12th of 2011, January 23rd of 2012, a mid-month meeting on March 14th. They had another meeting on April 23rd, and prior to that meeting, the commission had previously directed staff to bring back future land use options for the commission to consider, one of which would be an option for no future industrial or commercial development south and west of the airport. And they also had previously asked to reduce the approximately 300 acres of industrial and commercial in that area to approximately 125 acres. So staff brought a number of options back to the Planning Commission for them to review in April. The first was the original approved future land use plan. It has industrial and commercial uses, about 285 acres of industrial, about 15 acres of commercial, and had language in the industrial description for this purple here for encouraging soil conserving businesses to locate in that area, which is similar to the policy language in Horizon 2020 Chapter 7, which was the policy basis for putting industrial there. Option 2A was an industrial commercial mix, no hard boundaries for that land use. Is meant to be master planned development proposal organized around the corner of 1500 Road and 2440 Highway. Would have a mixture of industrial and commercial uses and be limited to 125 acres. It's this area here. Option 2B would have straight industrial and commercial categories. It puts neighborhood commercial on the northwest corner of that intersection and puts industrial on sort of the northeast corner on the west side of 1500 Road. The commercial limited to 20 acres and the industrial to 105 acres. And then option 2C is basically the same as 2B, just organizes the industrial a little more tightly around the corner. Then option 3 was no future industrial or commercial south and west of the airport, so this becomes ag there there's a little tiny bit of existing commercial in there. So the sector plan, the Planning Commission approved option 3 on April 23rd by a vote of 7-2. When they approved this with no future industrial or commercial there, it kind of messed up some of the policies that were in the plan, so we came back in May and asked them to approve some changes that aligned to the rest of the document with this action, and they approved that on May 21st. The County Commission considered the Planning Commission approved plan on June 13th and approved it by a vote of 2-1. There might be some question as to what removing the future industrial here does to the overall industrial picture in Douglas County. This is the existing city-zoned industrial property. It's IBP, which is Industrial Business Park, and IL and IG, light industrial, general industrial. And there's still some land available in some of these areas for development. But in total, that industrially zoned property is about 2,400 acres. And then on this map, it's the light color here to focus on. These are the sector plan. We do sector plans, and some of those have had future industrial areas in them. So the West K10 plan here, the Farmers Turnpike up here, farmland and southeast area, that's about 1,400 acres of future industrial in those sector plans. So with that, the recommendation is to approve the comprehensive plan amendment to Horizon 2020 to include the Northeast Sector Plan and adopt Joint Ordinance 8591, Resolution 12-9.
Questions for staff?
One question.
You.
Thanks, Dan. The snowflakes, I know they're not there now, but the one that was removed at Midland Junction, do you know what the impact is on removing that, or why that was also removed?
When we did a no development here, we took away the snowflake there, and it made sense to remove that one as well. It's farther north out of the area. The Planning Commission considered that at the meeting, and they talked about it and included that with their approval. So, I mean, it doesn't affect the existing development there now. That was meant to be a future employment area with all sorts of different things going on. So.
Right. and we removed it. But when I was looking at, I didn't see that they did discuss it. I only saw a mention that someone said, why are we removing this without discussing it?
I thought they had discussed it.
Commissioner Hurd asked when they actually voted on it. He's,
Well, and we may have to look deeper and listen to the audio. The minutes summarize some of that, but there was some discussion based on the other reasons for removing the snowflake southwest of the airport. There was discussion, I think it was the Commissioner Hurd's question was more about, we focused so much on the southwest area, they didn't focus a lot of their discussion on Midland Junction, but it was part of their motion and part of what they adopted with the plan.
okay. Thanks.
Mike?
Dan, refresh my memory, wasn't there a smaller industrial tract, I think it was along the south side of I-70, that directly south of the property just south of the airport? Or at least in one of the plans, I remember at a study session that we had here, that there was some county industrial recommended ground south side of I-70.
Well, there's county industrially zoned land here south of I-70.
It remains there.
It remains there. This plan doesn't change the existing zoning rights that property have now. So those properties that have industrial zoning currently could, if the project is of the right size, develop with a county approved site plan. If it's a large enough project, they may have to comply with, and they need city services, then they may have to comply with the sector plan, which calls that area out for very low density residential. Would annex and rezone and.
That was the part that I was questioning.
Yeah.
Okay.
Other questions for staff? Okay. Entertain public comment at this time.
Come on, people.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. I'll make this short because you've heard this for 3 or 4 years that we've been working on this, and
Mr. Boyle, will you state your name for the record, please?
Oh, Ted Boyle, President of North Lawrence Improvement Association, representing the residents of North Lawrence, 2,500 people, 1,200 residents and businesses. And so, like I said, I'll make this short for you so you can go home. This is something that North Lawrence Improvement and Grant Township have been working on for 4 or 5 years. It hasn't been just 3 years, it's been 4 or 5 years. And what this does, this directly affects North Lawrence. We are at the bottom of the basin. We are at the bottom of the hill. Water runs downhill, we all know that. So any development that happens out there, the water comes in here, into our homes. And when the stormwater study was done, there was $16 million worth of improvements in city limits of North Lawrence, $25 million of improvements at Grant Township and around the airport before development was being done. That was, what, 6 years ago? So, you know, that's probably, it was $45 million then, it's probably 55 or 60 now. So this directly affects 1,200 people and about 900 homes. So these people worry about this development to the north. We used to talk about a grocery store being in North Lawrence. Well, now we talk about the stormwater because over 100 homes were built in North Lawrence in the last 15 years. That contributed to our stormwater problem. We did not have a stormwater problem. I was up here debating this with the City Commission and the Planning Commission 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 18 years ago. Everybody said, no, it won't affect you. We'll dig the ditches deeper. We'll get that water out of your neighborhood. That didn't happen. You took our storm drainage out by building on the open spaces, which other parts of town, before development starts, the infrastructure is put in, not in North Lawrence. the development was built and no infrastructure was brought to us. Now, 20 years later, 15, 20 years later, maybe we're going to get a pump at 6th and Maple. Now, that's going to take some water away out of North Lawrence, in the heart of North Lawrence, existing, not out to the north of us. The pump on North 2nd Street, it's been improved twice. It's over capacity. It doesn't take any water out of North Lawrence. It takes the water out of the commercial part of North Lawrence. 93, we had the flood. 95, we had the pump. So you protected the commercial part of North Lawrence and North 2nd Street, but you did nothing for the residential part of it. So this development out there directly affects us. And get to the type 1, type 2 soils, you know, we didn't even hear about that. Nobody knew anything about that until this Northeast Sector Plan came up. And now type 1, type 2 soils are at the top of the agenda. That's something that should be preserved. But you're looking at 800 or 900 homes, 1,200 individuals living over there, businesses that need to be safe and protected from stormwater. So that's all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Boyle. Next speaker, please.
We've all gotten to know each other so well that we just kind of signal around to see who's going to go next. And that's one of the pluses of the debate that's gone on. I'm Hank Booth, Lawrence Chamber of Commerce. And I think it's been, like you said, Ted, about 4 years that we've been discussing this. And I did some figuring before last spring, and it's a little bit over 55 hours of meetings that we've held. Ted's been to all of them. A few of the other people have been to all of them, and it's been a very interesting process. First, one thing I think we all reached agreement on, and that's that our neighbors in North Lawrence must have more work done on flood control and drainage issues. There's just no question about that. And now a couple of the other points that were made over this period of time. Many people, of course, argued for the preservation for agricultural use only of the type 1 and 2 soil ground that is in that northeast sector in Grant Township. And it was interesting and perhaps a bit ironic that many of those who argued for a judicious use of a small amount of that ground and for property rights for those property owners in that area own a great preponderance of that land or have farmed it for several families have farmed it for over 130 years. They know the ground, they know what it does, and they know what it produces, every acre of it, every inch of it. Approximately 10,600 acres of land are in that northeast sector, and an early proposal called for about 800 to 1,000 acres of use. I think many people thought that was too much right at the beginning. It was cut to about 400 or 500 acres in specific areas abutting the highways, railroad tracks, and the airport area. And then further compromise took that down to, I believe Dan indicated, about 200, 250 acres. By the way, Dan Warner gets a medal for attending the most hours of meetings of any planning staff member in the last 5 years. That compromise did take it down to a much smaller amount of ground, and that passed the Planning Commission, as you saw, by a 1-vote margin. Quickly try to summarize the rest of it. Those who fought for less intrusion than 1% of the total acreage later were able to get another round of votes, and that brings us to tonight's concluding vote, apparently. It has been noted that many landowners and the men and women who live, make their living, produce the food from that land, and produce in good weather bounteous crops, have stopped participating in the discussion. And the bottom line is they're tired. and they continued to spend long hours working on that land up in Grant Township. They thought, honestly, that a compromise had been reached, it was complete, and that the plan that would cut the acreage that they'd originally asked for by 75% was going to be what was passed. Now, so when they learned that that wasn't enough and that it would be cut to about 100 acres, they're pretty practical folks. They said enough is enough. We are done going to meetings, and I guess you're going to do what you're going to do. We all agree on two things. Those are very unique soils, type 1 and 2. It is the preponderance of the farmland in that northeast sector, and no one argues that it should be built up with many, many buildings and warehouses and industrial sites. No one's ever asked for that. But that is also a very unique site for another reason to Douglas County and for the entire northeast sector of Kansas, not just Douglas County. It has, in an immediate hub, rail, air, and highway, interstate highway transportation resources, something that many people are looking for. And finally, as I conclude, let me say that Horizon 2020, hard to believe, but it's about at the end of its useful life. And so as you all sit in the next few years of your commission terms, will we call it Further Horizons 2050 or whatever, but the work probably should get started in the next year or two. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Booth. Next speaker, please.
My name is Barbara Clark. I am a landowner and a diversified farmer in northern Douglas County in Grant Township. When I left my home this evening, my husband was on a tractor preparing soils to plant 2 winter wheat. So I do have an interest in the agricultural soils in that area. May I move to the Elmo?
Certainly.
Just get that for you. There it is. You can just zoom it in and out here if you'd like. Just by dialing that back and forth. Maybe. I might be getting glare off this sleeve, so if I may just take this off. One thing that I wanted to say is that a sector plan is looked at in the context of the entire county. And the area in blue here is the Northeast Sector Plan. And you can see it is truly an anomalous area as far as the congregation of capability class 1 and 2 soils. I am a member of the CRP Steering Committee. There will be others that will speak tonight concerning public safety, property loss. Ted has addressed that for the North Lawrence residents. We'll also be discussing some about the infrastructure costs and the maintenance costs in perpetuity about development of the Northeast sector. And I do have to say, well, first I'm going to give you my conclusion because many times I run out of time to say that. But I would ask that you align your decision this evening with both the Planning Commissioner's 7-2 vote and the County Commission's 2-1 vote and approve the Northeast Sector Plan as it's presented to you this evening. I also have to say that, and I've said this in the past, I think we hear continued misusage of the Northeast Sector Plan as an area with a multimodal hub. We'll have someone address this evening some information from the Union Pacific offices about the difficulty of bringing rail into the area that was designated for industrial development and the cost associated with that. I would say that any CEO in Douglas County has equal access to the airport to fly a corporate jet in and out for transportation of personnel. And indeed, there is 59 highway and I-70, but road improvements would be quite extensive in order to make those viable hubs also. But back to the soils, which is my charge. You You are not without choices. I know you're familiar with the map in Chapter 7 that shows the 11 identified industrial areas to be developed in Douglas County. Let me just show you a map that I think demonstrates the preponderance of soils throughout these 11 sites. Excuse me, I'm going to take it out of the sleeve. These are the 11 sites. There are 10 bar graphs because Eudora North and Eudora South are combined as one. The tops of the graphs illustrate the number of acreage in total. The darker green and the paler green here are the content of capability class 1 and 2 soils at that industrial site. The airport is 100% capability class 1 and 2 soils. Midland Junction is the next largest collection of capability class 1 and 2 soils of any industrial site designated. And you can see the extreme diminishing amounts. These are all 2s. This is a small amount of 1 at Farmland Industry, a small amount at Eudora North, none at Baldwin, and none at Highway 57 and K33. You're with many choices as far as what you have in this county as far as development. The Horizon 2020 says that we should identify 1,000 new acres. We're at 1,426 as far as acres that can be developed. I'm running out of time. That's really all I have to say. I think it is important to consider public safety, the future of agriculture for our community, and agriculture is a great economic driver. That cannot be denied. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Ms. Clerk. I said thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi, I'm Jerry Jost. I live at 217 North 5th. I've lived in this northeast sector the last 20 years, most of it near KU Field Station in the northeast sector. And I'm going to use the Elmo to, if I may, come here. I want to briefly give a visual history of our area in the northeast sector. This is Bowersock Dam in 1903. You can kind of see Abe and Jake's, and you can see Bowersock generator there in the north. The hydroelectric plant would be a lot of it underwater right there. This is 1951, a well-known, remembered flood as well. That's the airport, 1951. Of course, since then, the levee has been built. This is the flood in 1993. And you're looking at North 2nd Street underwater. And remember on East 1500 Road, where the proposed industrial site is, this was 2008 and about almost a 3-inch rain, covering all that farmland underwater. Just a little bit north of there on East 1500 Road, you'll see a water topping over East 1500 Road. One of the major concerns here is public safety. Emergency vehicles have to get through the county, and if you have more industrial development, that overtopping gets larger. And the North Lawrence Drainage Study said that we would have to spend in 2005 over $14 million to raise these roads. Now, if you raise these roads, you got to create 14 hydraulic structures to get the water over the roads and downstream. And that's $2005. And that's not counting ancillary roadways, bridges, traffic control devices, and right-of-way acquisitions. So a lot of cost. Part of the reason why this whole sector hasn't been developed have been these particular reasons. It just historically has flooded a lot. And because it's flooded a lot, that's why we have all those class 1 and 2 soils. And finally, this is an image of the airport, and they were attempting to put in a sewage storage tank that was to be buried 28 feet deep, and the contractor that was hired to do that gave up because they were using 7 temporary pumps and couldn't pump out the water in drought conditions. And my point here is there's unintended or unanticipated complications with development in this area because it has historically been a flood area. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Jost. Next speaker, please.
My name is Dan Dannenberg, 2702 University Drive. I support North Lawrence Improvement Association on this issue, and I'm pretty sure I can speak for Sunset Hills Neighborhood Association on this too. I believe they support North Lawrence Improvement Association on this matter. I also support the last speaker. I thought he put together some pretty solid points on the matter. The final point is, I heard the term snowflake here. It's the middle of September. I have no idea what snowflake is. I don't think we need insider argot or jargon in a meeting like this. If we're going to use those terms, they need to be explained. And I would ask that somebody tell what does snowflake mean?
Mr. McCullough, snowflake?
Yes, Mayor. The snowflake was a map generated with Chapter 7, industrial chapter of our comprehensive plan that actually depicted large snowflake-looking symbols on the map that reflected where industrial locations in the county would be designated per our land use chapter of Horizon 2020. So when we talk about snowflakes, those are designated intersections of major highways or other transportation systems where we would anticipate industrial land use.
Thank you for the explanation. Next speaker, please.
My name is Charles Novogradik. I'm a resident of the city of Lawrence and a landowner of agricultural land and industrial land in the Northeast Sector Plan area. I'm very positive about the plan. We have gone through a lot to develop it, and it's thoughtful. I think it considers the science and some of the difficulties of the area. It's realistic, and I think it's good for the whole community as a whole. And I think I can live with it. Our land is located within a mile of the Turnpike intersection on highway. We have highway frontage, and we've owned it for over 20 years. In 1995, we decided to develop it. And by that, I mean develop it agriculturally by planting trees, nut tree orchard. And this is a project that would take decades to develop and will last beyond my lifetime and beyond my ability to protect it. We are, the only fear that I have for failure at this point is wet soil or flooding or the diseases that are associated with wet and soggy soil. So when industry was proposed, the 800 or 900 or 1,000 acres of industry, we began to start becoming involved in the planning process and attending all these meetings. And we were trying to decide whether the industry would be good neighbors for our kind of agriculture and for agriculture in general. And we began to educate ourselves about the soils, and along with everybody else, we learned about capability 1 and 2 soils, and we learned that the capability 1 soil in particular, which has 10 times the KSAT or saturation ability of capability 2 soils, is essentially the sponge that absorbs the rain and stormwater in North Lawrence in an area that's completely level. The drainage goes straight down. It doesn't go across the landscape. It goes into the soil. So when you compromise capability 1 soils, which are slightly higher than the 2, you compromise the drainage of the area. So it's important when you consider the qualities of soil that you protect that in particular for amelioration of drainage. In fact, the soils, in particular capability 1 soils, are our cheapest, most economical flood control structure that you have. So I'm also learning by observation of other industrial projects in the area, and those that have come along since I've been out there in the last 20 years have all been built on fill, impermeable fill, have added rooftops and gravel or asphalt paving. And they have done zero, that is apparent to me, to mitigate the runoff. The runoff is absorbed by their neighbors who happen to be lower after they filled the land, which I could be. So I've decided that if my neighbors developed, I would not be able to continue because I would have to absorb their runoff. But I'm positive about this plan that respects agriculture, and I know it's not going to be written in stone. There could be other proposals, and if somebody comes along with a big proposal and decides to employ 2,000 people and not go bankrupt and fix all our drainage problems, then probably it's going to be a different story. But until that Walt Disney story comes true, we're going to have to look at this realistic. And agriculture is the industry in North Lawrence. As now an owner of commercial property, I have looked around. My commercial property is vacant, by the way. The next door property is vacant. The lumberyard is vacant, and half a dozen other properties on 5924 Highway stand vacant. I've looked around, and I despair as to the commercial property up there. We don't need more commercial property, and we certainly don't need virgin agricultural land to be taken out of agricultural use. There's not 2 acres of bottomland in North Lawrence that isn't farmed every year. There's many acres of industrial land just sitting vacant. I'm happy with this plan as it is. I want to thank the staff for all the hard work over the years and urge your positive consideration of it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Hello, my name is Tom Harper, and just listening to these folks who live out there or have real connections to that land has been interesting. And to think that this dialogue has been going on for 4 or 5 years, wow, that's everybody involved in that. Kudos just for the endurance, and they're doing it because they care. And clearly, they've done their homework. And I urge you to vote yes for this Northeast Sector Plan. If we have all of these smart people in the room saying they're good with it, that says a lot. So thank you for considering the vote, and I think it's something each of you can be proud of.
Thank you, Mr. Harper. Other speakers?
Good evening. My name is Lane Williams. I live on 1500 Road. I'm a property owner, and I'm also on the steering committee of the CRP. I wanted to just address the issue of rail access, which has come up time and again throughout this process and also Horizon 2020. There's been many statements made about the unique characteristic of the Northeast sector as having access to rail. I had a discussion with staff employee of Kansas Department of Transportation in April, shortly before the Planning Commission meeting, regarding the viability of gaining access for industrial property on the west side or on the east side of Highway US 5924 from the rail lines on the west side of the highways. Basically, it falls within the category of, depending on how much money you want to spend, you could probably do it. But it's going to be very spendy, and you also have serious safety concerns, I believe, because anything that you have to, first of all, you have rail lines that are high capacity, high-speed rail lines. They're owned by the UP, and typically, according to the staff who does a lot of the rail work for KDOT, that they would require an industry that uses up to 100 cars per day minimum, which would require a separate line off the main line and 1 to 2 spur lines. If you're going to have an industrial area east of Highway 59 and 24 and south of 24, you're going to have to cross 59 at some point, south of the intersection of 5924 and 5940, at which that's a busy intersection, especially in the morning and in the evening, so you're going to have some issues. And by the way, the sector plan already recognizes that rail lines pose issues at various crossings in the area already, and that's on page 212 of the draft of the Northeast Sector Plan. If you wanted to develop property to the north of Highway 24 and that intersection, the northeast corner of that property, you would then have to cross north of that intersection, creating another potential problem with traffic and rail line access. So I think that when considering whether this plan should be adopted, considering whether it's unique because of its rail access is highly debatable. And I'd ask that you not consider it, and I ask you that you support the sector plan as proposed tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Additional comments?
Commissioners, I'm Nancy Thelman. I'm a resident of Grant Township. My family owns a 100-plus acre working farm on which we run cattle, raise organic vegetables on several acres, bale, actually lease and bale 400 acres of hay and alfalfa, as well as have 4,000 square feet of vegetables produced under hoop houses. And so I come to you from that angle. I also come to you as county commissioner representing the 2nd District, which includes Grant Township and North Lawrence. I think it's unusual at this point, after 4 or 5 years, to have any public interest left in a topic. And so this issue has been something a lot of us have lived with for a long time. I commend everyone on both sides for sticking with it, and particularly for being civil all the way through. It's much appreciated effort in this community. It's no small accomplishment that we come here tonight. I thank the planning staff as well for your great patience. One thing we all know is that this Northeast Sector Plan is not a regulatory tool. It is rather a guideline for future land use that does not rule out a landowner's ability to bring development ideas forward to the Planning Commission. Instead, the Northeast Sector Plan lays out the pros and cons of developing the river bottom land of Grant Township and places the burden squarely on the shoulders of the landowner, developer, and the planning department to determine whether a development idea can overcome the uniquely difficult obstacles that Planning Director Scott McCullough so often cites in Grant Township. For instance, Mayor Shum and Commissioners, you yourselves know how hard it has been to dig a deep hole for a septic holding tank at the airport. Nearly 2 years into that seemingly simple infrastructure project, it stands abandoned because of water issues. Nothing to show for public dollars spent but a shallow and weed-filled hole. Someday, that small project may be completed so that new industry can come to the 55 acres at the airport, for which the plan makes room. I hope that's the case. But in the meantime, that abandoned project serves as a reminder that the deep topsoils and alluvial nature of the land in Grant Township presents a difficult set of challenges for even the simplest project. After all, it used to be a riverbed, and in many ways, below the surface, it still is. The Northeast Sector Plan takes the obstacles to development in Grant Township and the commensurate risk to the taxpayer seriously. That is all it does, but that it does that is immensely important, both for the citizen and business interests alike. In fact, I would call this sector plan business-friendly. Not that it rolls out the red carpet for a new wave of development, but because it is an honest assessment of the unique characteristics of river bottom land with all its variety of development challenges. Above ground, the sector plan lets the developer know clearly that being in close proximity to the airport, while an advantage in some ways, is a disadvantage in others. This sector plan is the only place in Horizon 2020 where a developer will learn that no project that creates a body of water within 10,000 feet of the perimeter of our airport will be allowed, either by mining or stormwater storage such as a lake or a pond. Midwest Concrete Materials, the company that invested millions of dollars in land and engineering in hopes of starting a sand pit in Grant Township, would have been spared enormous expense and heartache had they had this Northeast Sector Plan to work from. They would have known a sand pit proposal could not proceed because of the FAA waterfowl regulations that are now listed in the Northeast Sector Plan. But instead, with the current text in the comprehensive plan, we waved them on only to tell them months and millions of dollars later their project was dead, literally, in the water. So now we have a plan that gives a fair education and fair warning that development projects north of North Lawrence will come at extraordinary cost, if and when they come at all. In the meantime, the agricultural industry, and it is an industry, that surrounds the airport and extends north through the Kaw River Valley is becoming increasingly valuable because of its rare combination of 6 to 8 foot deep topsoil, its alluvial waters, its proximity to urban populations, and the growing recognition locally, regionally, and nationally that agriculture is key to any community's future health and economy. It's food, fiber, and fuel. To be sure, in an extreme case of need, loss of prime agricultural assets to industrial development might be necessary if there are no other acres to choose from. But in fact, there are many acres available to us. 750 new acres identified, annexed, and zoned by us all in the last 4 years. We have, in fact, worked together hard to bring a lot of new industrial acres to our inventory. In my mind, and in most taxpayers' minds, we elected leaders need to choose carefully where our precious infrastructure dollars are spent. Taking prime agricultural soils out of production forever, spending extraordinary amounts of taxpayer dollars to build where water naturally wants to be, and plunging forward with fingers crossed in the name of economic development does not seem like a good plan to me. This Northeast Sector Plan is a good plan. It's wise. It's been thoroughly vetted by the public and thoroughly vetted by commissioners such as you. I would ask, as a citizen of Grant Township, as a county commissioner for the second district, representing some, not all, of the folks who support this, I ask for your approval.
Some questions.
Thank you. Okay.
Nancy, what, when you say, talking about spending an inordinate amount of money and plunging forward, I'm not sure what are you referring to, just by putting the sector plan together, or?
No, to set out a plan that doesn't give fair warning to developers that developing on these special soils of Grant Township cause extraordinary costs, not just regular infrastructure, but stormwater and flood infrastructure.
Okay.
That, yeah, just.
You
just-
said, when you said that, you said taxpayer dollars, plunging forward with taxpayer dollars, but you're talking
Well, it
about
is-
warning a private developer about spending their
Well,
money.
but it is usually the taxpayer in the end who pays the extra cost of the extraordinary infrastructure, like stormwater development, the flood infrastructure. It's oftentimes not just private funds that have to square with that. I mean, the North Lawrence drainage study suggests, tens of millions of dollars of cost to develop out there.
And one of the ways, I guess, in North Lawrence, we could potentially capture some of the resources necessary to deal with the drainage would be through potential developers that are willing to absorb those kind of costs. We all agree that that may be Disneyland, that someone could come along and do that. But what I'm wondering is, and just, I reviewed the minutes of your county commission meeting, and you said your issue was really about the flooding. And if a project were to come along that actually mitigates flooding, not just on their site, but actually improves North Lawrence, we don't know what the technology is 10 years from now. And you had said these are just a guideline, not zoning. So I guess I'm wondering what, this has come back to us. It was voted and approved upon, and it's just a guideline. Why does it have to come back and be redone after all the public input that went into this to get a compromise here that was approved by the Planning Commission? Why is that sent back if it's just a guideline?
Well, it's important to have a guideline that's accurate, that gives, that sets at its base what the best land use, the highest use is. Many of us believe that the highest use for this land is in agriculture and not developed. But it doesn't, this sector plan as it's stated now, doesn't prevent someone from coming forward with a proposal. But with this sector plan, they have an honest overview of those obstacles, which Scott McCullough lines out frequently in every public meeting.
Right, and we could do that overview without removing the color on the map. You know what I mean? You still have the overview but we've now pulled out the compromise of having any potential industrial there, even though you've still got all the information in there warning people.
Well,
about
when you put the purple on there and paint it as though that is what we feel should be there, it lays the expectation that that is what is going to be there, even though we know that the obstacles to significant development in that area are enormous. And so I think this plan lays out a reasonable expectation for the area. Now, if some extraordinary proposal is able to come along and pay extraordinary expenses without taking the public into enormous risk, then that should be considered. But this is an honest representation of the highest use of that land that we know right now.
Other questions? Thank you, Commissioner Thome. Any other comments?
Pen doesn't work. My name's John Naramore. I live in the Midland Valley. I've lived up there for about 30 years, more than 30 years. What I want to speak to is the fact that I sat on the industrial committee of Eco Squared that basically okayed the location of the, I don't know how many snowflakes were given to us around the county. And we were presented with pre-existing locations of these snowflakes, and the idea was to see whether or not they whether or not we were okay with them according to the criteria that was given to us. And one of the main criteria that was made a positive for these snowflakes was that the land was flat. Because for industrial development, as was said earlier, flat is good, apparently. If you're going to put a big building in, you don't have to do a lot of bulldozing or land work to get it ready. As I said, the fact that it was flat, even though a few of us brought up the fact that that didn't seem like it would be a positive thing given the lay of the land in the Grant Township area. Nevertheless, because of the criteria that we were given, we okayed it, and I okayed it also. Since then, I have become an elected board member of the the Kaw Valley Douglas County Drainage District. And I'm not speaking for that board by any means, but basically I'm speaking from what I've learned out in the field walking. You know, our job is to get water to the river, essentially, or make sure that it continues to the river. We have issues with trees in these various ditches that are to perform that task, trees and growth, and every now and then we have to bring in people to clear that out. And what's interesting is that there's not but maybe a ½ an inch or a 1 inch drop in that land. And so it hadn't been brought up here tonight, but there are various mitigations for mitigating plans for, you know, if that area was going to be developed industrial, they were talking about raising the roads. There was a lot of public money that had to be spent prior to anything being done by a private person. Raising roads, putting in another pump station. Somehow that water was projected to get from the area, let's say around the airport, over the railroad tracks, over the levee. And that was not going to be borne by private developers, but the idea was that that would be borne by the public. So I support the option number 3, mainly from an economic point of view, because I think it's imperative that we look at what we have realistically and what it would take to fix it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Naramore. Any other questions, comments? Okay, back to the City Commission for discussion. Let me start. I'm for it. I'm for approving this. I've been all along opposed to the consumption of Type 1 and Type 2 soils, or Tier 1, Tier 2, Class 1, Class 2 soils for industrial development. It's something that just cuts across me. I can't do it. You know, it's kind of a hokey little expression, but they ain't making any more of it. And when you pave it over, it's gone forever. And so, you know, with the world population growing, with the areas that were ravaged this summer in terms of production and ability to produce crops, and that's some of the most fertile soil in the whole entire world. And to think about paving it over when we have other options in the county and the area, I can't go there. It just doesn't make sense to me. So that's my statement. I'm going to support the plan as amended. Go ahead.
Just want to state, in the last 3 years, I came on this commission 3 years ago. We had an extremely serious lack of industrial ground at that time, and had an opportunity, had a lot of different projects presented to me that expanded the amount of industrial ground that we have available to new industry, and I voted for that many times because I believe very strongly that we've got to have jobs in our community, and we've got to have a tax base so that we can support the kind of projects and the kind of programs that we all value so much in Lawrence. Those projects were all on sites that were more appropriate to industrial growth. And I said yes to those projects so that I can say no to a project where I believe that industrial growth is inappropriate. I don't believe that it is an appropriate use of a Class 1 and Class 2 soil to be putting our industry on it. We need that activity. We need to have industrial sites. They just need to not be on that particular ground. And, you know, once, you know, again, it's something that not everybody understands intrinsically. but you cannot go backwards. You put something, you can't just, oh, well, we're going to take the building off, now we're going to be able to farm it. It doesn't work like that. You know, it's something maybe, I don't know, I've always been very, very interested in agriculture, and I come from grandparents who were wheat farmers out in Dodge City. And, you know, it's a matter of keeping that available for future generations. We need it now in our community. We need more local ag now. We're going to need it more later as the cost of fuel increases, particularly. The cost of our food's going up, and we're going to want to have it here, healthy, good, local food. It's a local industry right here that doesn't, you know, this is something that we've got that you can't find elsewhere, and we've got to keep it. Lots of good places to put into industrial ground in Lawrence, Kansas. The northeast sector, north of the airport there, is not one of them.
I guess I'll weigh in. I was on the planning commission a couple years ago, I guess, when we approved the plan. I believe it was 300 acres at that time. Scott, is that right? My concern mainly just lies in the process and the, you know, Lawrence, we do a lot of listening to neighbors, a lot of compromising on developments that happen. We've watched it, you know, on the planning commission all the time. We get kind of beat up about that a little bit, but honestly, I see that the vast majority of times it improves the project. It really, really does, and there's good examples, recent examples, where things have just gotten better through that process. And so, you know, I'm supportive of that. But in this case, I feel like we went through that same process, and we went through years. I mean, the 50-some hours that Hank's talking about is real. The amount of time that was put into this, and a compromise was reached. Neither side was happy with it, but I remember the extensive discussion at the Planning Commission that neither side was terribly happy. But we're down to 300 acres here from, and, you know, I don't know what it is, 10,000 in the northeast sector. I mean, that 300 acres isn't the difference, in my opinion, between being short of good farmland in the area necessarily, although I'd love to see it preserved and used for that purpose. But at the same time, you know, we had that public discussion, we had that compromise that came out, and we moved forward with it. And unlike normal when we do that, that compromise apparently wasn't good enough, so it's been sent back, pulled completely out of the plan. And, you know, I only leave it open to, Ted, I hear you talking about, you know, the drainage issues, and, you know, I've been on the Planning Commission and heard that same presentation. You got to be really tired of making it, and I commend you for continuing to show up to do that. But, you know, we're well aware of that, the drainage issues, and who knows down the road. I don't know what technology brings 20 years from now that there's an ability to help North Lawrence with their drainage issues, not hurt it. I mean, there's no way, regardless of what that color is on that map, that we're going to improve a project. This concrete slab is just going to put the drainage off on the neighbor next door. Could we set up some mechanism to fund not only taking care of their own drainage, but to somehow help mitigate some of North Lawrence's issues? Maybe industry is the only answer to help us really get the funds necessary to do that. I don't know. But anyway, this is a guideline. It's not zoning. But I'd still like to honor, I think, the compromises that come out of the public process, regardless of which way they go. I think that's only fair. And to Tom's comments, you know, I appreciate that. You mentioned all the smart people in the room with this real connection to the land. But I was there when there were triple this many smart people with connections to the land, but half of them were smart people with connections to the land that were on the other side of the issue. They owned it, you know? So they're just not here anymore. And so I hear all that, but at the same time, I've still got in my memory all of what we went through to come up with a plan that now has been sent back, and there's no industrial there. Truth is, though, in the end, that bothers me, but I've always been of the same opinion that probably this is never going to be really developed industrial. And really, even from a chamber standpoint, or those that are out there trying to create jobs for us, you know, it may be best that we not artificially inflate our industrial inventory by having that out there and calling it X number of industrial acres, because it's really not. It's not going to happen. So I just assume, you know, I think I'm okay. And again, we know, just as Nancy said, you know, and I think everybody has. I mean, it may be Disneyland, but if some developer came up, it doesn't stop us still. If someone were to come up with something that would mitigate flooding in North Lawrence, I'd like to think you'd entertain that idea. That, again, this is only a guideline, so that could still be entertained if it came up. But anyway, I just wanted to point out, I struggle. I'm not going to vote against it on principle here because I really do think that there's some positives, but I struggle a little bit with the fact that we've undone a public process that was really painstaking and a compromise that I think was fair. It's not like us to do it this way, I think, but I won't get in the way of it.
Yeah, I can go. There's been, I think, a long period of time that's transpired between when we started this process and where we're at tonight, and I think there's been a lot of water under the bridge as far as learning and understanding what this area means to the residents and to the city, to Douglas County. I was originally in favor of trying to get as much industrial land as necessary to try to attract businesses and to leverage Douglas County as a place for jobs and where people want to grow their businesses. Since all this gone through and we've been really educated on a lot of these matters, I think the city's taken some steps in trying to create some industrial land, and I think other people are still trying to create industrial land. I think there's been a lot of action. I think this plan maybe shone the light on how badly we need industrial land, but I think it also shone the light on how badly we need agricultural land. And a part of my basic belief is I don't think we should take away the right of somebody who owns land to do with it what they basically want to. But the second part of that goes with as long as it doesn't affect the neighbors and the people downstream, and in this case, literally downstream. So for me, this has come over time, but I believe that the people who want to use this land as agricultural deserves the same rights as somebody who wants to use it as commercial or industrial, in that they will, if you want to make an investment in an agribusiness here in town, it'd be nice to protect that and know what we as a community value and see as important for the future of Douglas County. So for me, by making these compromises, I think we as I think Hugh pointed out, take away the belief that this is going to be industrial, and we can focus our attention and our efforts on areas that can be easily attained as industrial land, and the future planning can reflect that belief. I would also like the future planning to reflect the belief that we want locally grown food and we want local agribusinesses to come here and to prosper. And if this is such a valuable asset, I believe that if we create that environment, that it can prosper. So I'm in favor of moving forward with the designation. I originally was not, but I've been taught a few things, and I think there's a lot to learn from the process, and I appreciate everybody's involvement.
Well, here we go. This is one of the beauties of going last. I'm going to sound like a genius because I'm going to agree with a lot of the things that's already been said. So, one of the things as I look at the Northeast Sector Plan, you go to the recommendations section of the plan, and it does talk about a number of things: the costly stormwater infrastructure needs as urbanization occurs, the significant amounts of regulatory floodplain, significant amounts of Class 1, Class 2 soils, the FAA regulations, and Lawrence Municipal Airport Protection Zones. Those are all very important part of this, and what development concerns need to be taken in the future. One of the concerns that I have, and Commissioner Thälmann, you brought up an important part. This does not restrict a property owner from coming forward and bringing an idea or a business or some type of development, an idea that's going to go before the Planning Commission for consideration and ultimately before the County and City Commission. One of the concerns that I have is that may not really happen, because the thing that's going to happen is that I can hear Scott and his staff right now as he puts down the deal, says, well, this is in direct conflict with the Northeast area or Northeast Sector Plan. I can see those words now. So I know that One of the things that concerns me is to make sure that people do have the opportunity, if they have a good idea, if they have a good plan that's worthy of consideration, to be able to come forward and it's going to be given a fair shake in consideration by either this body or the body that you are a member of. And I think that if we understand that this is simply a guide plan, if we understand that there are challenges that are real in the plan area, then I think that that's fine. There is procedures that are going to happen, as Scott and I talked earlier. There's going to have to, if somebody does have a good plan that comes forward for consideration, there's going to be a process that has to be followed. There's going to have to be changes to the various plans to be able to allow that business or that development to be able to occur. So I think that we all need to understand that. Do I think we're really down to one 300-acre site, as we look at the 10,000 acres that were studied? Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, it's less than that, but, the final bit of the deal is that, is this a good plan? Well, I believe that there's been a lot of consideration, on all kinds of things to be considered here. And is it hard for me to vote for? Some part of me says yeah, the other part of me says there's a lot of good thought that's gone here. Yeah, this is a tough deal and has been a tough deal for quite a few years now. There has been a lot of work that's been done. I think I'm becoming an old commissioner while these things are happening, but there has been a lot of work that's been done. I appreciate the amount of time that's gone in by everybody, our staff, the residents, property owners, everybody that was involved. But I do know one thing that I think it has been 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago now. Ted, you might even be wrong on the time going back, when the drainage study was presented to us and the dollar amounts that were required to take care of flooding issues in the greater North Lawrence and Grant Township area. Those are real dollars, and those are things that I know that the public coffers can't afford to pay for at this time. Commissioner Carter, you're probably right. Development, specific kinds of developments are probably going to be the ones someday that are going to, have to pony up and pay the greatest amount of cost. And there may be ways of doing it, but as of right now, I do know it's pretty flat, and we can't move a whole lot of water. Dave, the concern that I have with the sewer from the airport, I mean, those are real, and I know that you and your staff have dealt with those, so we know that there's concern on extending infrastructure. So I think everything that you have to consider here, I think that we are giving notice to the public, the developing public, that there are problems, there's real challenges, and as commissioner, I think it's my job when I look at sector plans that I have to take all that into consideration and be able to make a decision one way or another. And I think in this particular case, I believe that I can concur with the planning staff, the planning commission, and the Douglas County Commission. Thanks.
Okay, I just want to say thanks to everyone who's participated. It's been a very long road, and I would echo some of the comments that were made. I think everyone learned a lot about this project and the type of land and what some of the needs are relative to keep it safe. So I'd entertain a motion at this time to approve. Let me find it here. Receive the, pardon me, receive the draft 2012 plan, ordinance number 8748.
So moved.
Moved Cromwell. Second Dever. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carries 5-0. Thank you very much. Take 5 minutes. next item on the agenda is to receive a draft 2012 plan for the establishment of an organized recycling collection service and receive draft requests for proposals for a citywide single-stream recycling collection service and authorized distribution of an RFP. Staff.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Residential curbside recycling.
Could you please state your name for the record, please?
Yes, I'm Kathy Richardson. I'm the Operations Supervisor for the Waste Reduction Recycling Division, which is part of the Solid Waste Division within Public Works. Excuse me. I'm going to go ahead and dive into the information. A little bit of background. At the City Commission meeting on February 28th, the Solid Waste Task Force recommended a goal of 50% recycling rate by volume by 2020. And to achieve this goal, the Solid Waste Task Force recommended implementing a citywide, single-stream residential curbside recycling program if fiscally prudent and sustainable. I also wanted to add that they did recommend issuing an RFP so the city would have good information on what it would cost to implement a curbside recycling program for residential customers. At the same meeting, the City Commission meeting on February 28th, the City Commission did direct staff to prepare a report on RFP options that outlined the major policy issues for a curbside recycling program. And as we were working on this report, staff did learn that implementing a citywide curbside recycling program for the City of Lawrence is considered establishing an organized recycling collection service as defined by KSA 12-2036, which is the Organized Collection Service Act. And this information was presented to the City Commission at the meeting on June 12th this year. One of the required action steps was the resolution of intent. And the City Commission did adopt a resolution of intent on June 12th of 2012 this year. And it is the city's intent to consider the adoption of an organized collection service for residential recycling within the city limits of Lawrence, Kansas. And just to add to that, this resolution of intent did not obligate the city to pursue a curbside recycling service, but it does provide notification and consideration of such. Okay, plan development. This is what we've been busy working on. During the 90-day period, which is approximately June 13th through September 10th, following the adoption of that resolution of intent, staff did develop a plan and invited curbside recycling haulers who are operating services in Lawrence, and also other interested haulers in the area and interested individuals attended these meetings. We did have a total of 3 meetings scheduled here in the City Commission room at different days of the week, different hours, so that it would work for all the companies. And I did provide a copy of an attendance summary so you could see who had attended those meetings. I did want to mention too, the meetings were posted on the city's website as well as our online calendar. And we did, for the curbside recycling haulers who are registered here in Lawrence, we did send them a letter with the description of when the meetings were occurring and location and all of that information. We followed up with a phone call and also sent email reminders. Draft plan, this is one of the components of the City Commission agenda for tonight, which is receive the draft plan for the establishment of an organized recycling collection service. I did want to note tonight is not the public hearing for this proposed plan. That public hearing will occur on December 11th, 2012 during the City Commission meeting, and that was stated in the resolution of intent that was adopted. And I wanted to provide just a little bit of detail regarding the draft plan, which you received a copy of. It does Basically, every single section is what is listed within KSA 12-2036, and we did essentially spend a whole meeting with the haulers and others in attendance, filling out the sections. The first section is a description of the procedures used for development of the plan for an organized recycling collection service in compliance with all required notice provisions. I've covered a lot of that information already. And then evaluating certain sections, achieving stated goals. We did use the Solid Waste Task Force, a goal of 50% recycling rate by volume in 2020. And for minimizing displacement and economic impact to current recycling collectors. We had a conversation about that. As written in the draft plan, the City of Lawrence plans to issue a request for proposals to select the most qualified and cost-effective professional service provider for the proposed organized recycling collection service. I also want to point another section. To minimize displacement and economic impact to current recycling collectors, the City of Lawrence will be evaluating proposals on how the proposers incorporate small local curbside recycling haulers into their recycling collection service. So just wanted to point that part out. Another section of the plan is ensuring participation in the decision-making process of all interested parties, including all licensees and other persons operating recycling collection services in Lawrence as of the date of the resolution of intent to organize collection in Lawrence, which was the date of June 12, 2012. And I did already mention we had sent out letters, emails, and phone calls to those curbside recycling haulers. The next section is to evaluate maximizing efficiency in recycling collection. And wanted to point out a few of the discussion points that we had at our planning meetings. The success of a recycling program is dependent on the efficiency of collection. And the haulers and staff did come up with a list of ways to maximize efficiency, including implementing a citywide curbside recycling service. So it's the mandatory pay voluntary participation. All households are under the same service, the same program, and it's billed through the city. Single stream recycling program is another option, and that is, again, households can commingle all their recyclables into one container, and it makes it easier for collection. Also offering a standard container similar to the way the city is approaching the trash collection, which is with a cart. For multifamily households, that may mean, especially in apartment complexes, it may mean dumpsters. And then the highest level of automated fleet for collection, and that's fully automated and semi-automated trucks to collect the recyclables. Another topic that we did discuss quite a bit was every other week collection versus weekly collection. There was consensus that the city should consider implementing every other week collection for maximizing basically the volume per set out and increasing the efficiency, the collection efficiency, and providing other benefits such as reduced collection costs, reduced emissions from collection vehicles, and reduce impact on city streets. A lot of the haulers had comments on regarding the every other week in communities that they service where it works. I also recently attended a solid waste management conference in Washington, D.C., and heard a lot of presentations and talked to some communities that have been switching from weekly collection of curbside recycling to every other week. And again, it's just to cut some of those costs, and they have found a lot of success. Some of the worries with every other week collection is that folks will forget to set out their recycling on the week that they're scheduled to set out their recyclables. And they did talk about education and outreach and communication being the success of that program, where you can provide a decal to stick on the container that has a calendar for the year, letting people know when their day is, or a magnet on the refrigerator. There's a lot of different ways that communities have been able to implement this successfully. And then the last portion of the plan is a detailed justification for any tax, franchise, or similar fee, and we just restated what the resolution of intent said, which is assessment of franchise fees for recycling collection service providers is not at the time of passage of resolution of intent anticipated. I'm sorry, I feel like I'm rushing through this. All right. Draft RFP. So another component of the City Commission agenda item for tonight is to receive the draft RFP for a citywide single-stream residential curbside recycling collection service and authorize distribution of the RFP. The City Commission may also consider tonight to authorize the city to submit a proposal in response to the RFP. And I will add the Solid Waste Division, which includes the Waste Reduction and Recycling Division, is prepared for and excited at the opportunity to submit a proposal in response to this RFP. The draft RFP, there are two types of proposals. One is for a turnkey recycling operation proposal, and then also there's a recyclable material processing and marketing only type proposal, which would allow the city to collect the recyclables. And then proposers may submit multiple and alternate responses to each of these two. These were as described by the Solid Waste Task Force when they had their meetings. One component to the RFP that we had recently added is companies submitting a turnkey operation proposal who own and operate a material recovery facility will also be asked to submit a material processing proposal. So that is in that draft RFP. And the city proposal would be for collection only, and our proposal would be matched up with a material processing proposal. So in a sense, we're exempt from, I mean, we would want to be a turnkey operation proposal, but we don't have that part of where are we going to take the material just yet, because the city would be asking for those proposals at the same time. So the idea is there's turnkey operation proposals coming in, and they're due on the same date as the material processing proposals are due, and the city is submitting their costs for collection only. We're exempt from specifying what material recovery facility we would be using. And then the selection committee would choose one of the proposals of the material processing that best matches or that deems more advantageous to the city as determined by the selection committee, and thus making that a turnkey operation proposal. And then you would have apples to apples comparison. You'd have all turnkey operation proposals to select from. The next slide, I just wanted to add, this is the one edit, just to make it front and center and not hidden within the document that I added after you received the draft of the RFP, is on page 28, section 3, proposal content. This is where the city lists information proposals shall submit. We typed in there, description of how your company will incorporate small local curbside recycling haulers into your recycling collection service to minimize displacement and economic impact to current recycling collectors. You also received a copy of a matrix of major policy issues for curbside recycling, and that's for you to consider and evaluate. I did want to point out there's a lot of information on that document. Also there, it includes feedback from the Solid Waste Task Force, as well as feedback from the Sustainability Advisory Board. And the Sustainability Advisory Board also did read and the request for proposals document and submitted some feedback to staff. I don't want to go too in detail with the major policy issues that are present in the the RFP draft, but I did want to just mention a few and highlight. As written in the draft RFP, it is for mandatory pay voluntary participation program. It is single stream collection. Types of containers it calls for are carts for most single-family households, and like I said, in some apartment complexes or other multifamily housing, it would be dumpsters or a cluster of carts. That's another option. For frequency of collection, the RFP does require pricing for both every other week and weekly collection, so we have that information. And the type of customers, this is an RFP for single-family and multifamily households. This excludes commercial customers. We did add a section on public spaces, and the RFP encourages submittal of options for services at City Hall, downtown, city parks. Collection service provided by, it could be the city, it could be a private hauler, it could be a private hauler with subcontractors, or the city with subcontractors. Processing of materials, that's another major policy issue. Private haulers are asked to specify which material recovery facility they're using. The city is exempt from stating that, again, for reasons I specified earlier. Pricing schedule and revenue sharing, again, every other week and weekly collection prices will be asked from the turnkey operation proposers, and the city would essentially pay a price per household per month. Revenue sharing, they will be describing what their process is with calculating revenue sharing, if any. Material processing proposals will be basically the city paying a price per ton of single stream recyclable material. And then usually in material processing proposals, there is revenue sharing, so they are to describe that. Responsibility for administrative services, the way the RFP is written is the city will be responsible for billing and receiving customer complaints. For performance assurance, there's a lot of reporting involved that is listed in the RFP, but on post-termination performance assurance, there's a performance bond listed. And then length of contract, we have stated it as 7 years and may consider 2 3-year renewals. And again, some people have asked why the 7 years. It's just to allow the contractors to recover capital costs of equipment like vehicles and the carts purchased to provide the service. The RFP schedule, if the City Commission authorizes distribution of the RFP proposed schedule is as follows. Release of the RFP would be tomorrow. Notification of intent means anyone who is interested in submitting a proposal does have to submit a notification of intent on September the 26th. At that same time, that same date, any questions from the potential proposers are due. And at least one rep from each of the proposers will be required to attend a mandatory pre-proposal meeting on October 1st. It's going to be at 9 a.m. here in the City Commission room. And all those questions that were submitted by the proposers will be answered at that meeting. Addenda to the RFP, anytime prior to proposals being due, addenda could be added. And proposals would be due on October 26th by 5 p.m. And finally, we would conduct interviews of selected proposers during the month of November, and hopefully have some information for the City Commission end of November, early December. And the reason why that is important is here is the estimated timeline and all those action steps of KSA 12-2036. This was presented at the June 12th meeting, but I have gone ahead and just written some notes on the estimated timeline. We are on track so far. Resolution of intent was adopted June 12th. we have completed the 90-day planning period. And tonight, we're here to present you the draft plan as well as the draft RFP. And if the RFP is authorized to be released, again, the schedule on the slide before will roll out so that on December 11th, the City Commission may consider adopting an ordinance that establishes an organized recycling collection service. And the line right before that, November 11th, that's just when we're required to notify all the curbside recycling haulers that are registered with the City of Lawrence that this meeting, the public hearing on the proposed plan and the adoption of the ordinance will occur. And if the City Commission adopts the ordinance that establishes an organized recycling collection service on December 11th of this year, then the earliest we can commence this service would be June 11th, 2014. One of the other things I wanted to point out, and I know was discussed at the last meeting, but I just want to point it out again. There's 1 year from the adoption of that resolution of intent to adopt the ordinance. So 1 year, and if we pass that timeline, then we have to start this process all over again. And I don't know if you want to hear my presentation 2 times. All right, and then the last slide, just once again, what we're here for tonight, receiving the draft plan for establishment of an organized recycling collection service, received the draft RFP for a citywide, single-stream residential curbside recycling collection service, authorized distribution of the RFP, and also authorized the city to submit a proposal in response to the RFP. Thanks.
Questions for staff?
I did have a question. Could you just go over again the way that proposers would include smaller providers in their proposal?
Sure.
Thanks.
It's up to each proposer to come up with a plan, but it has been discussed at actually 2 of the meetings. It was discussed the possibility of the proposer, or even if it were the city, submitting the proposal that curbside recycling haulers, the small local curbside recycling haulers, would maybe be allowed to keep the customers that they currently have. And, if those customers had opt for the city or the other private hauler, service, then that would switch. So they would basically, their business level would stay at the number of customers that they have now. There was some discussion about, and I want to bring it up because I want to make sure everybody understands that we did have these discussions. There was discussion about the possibility of, having an RFP that splits the city in 6 zones or 6 sections. And at the one meeting we were discussing that, one of the smaller haulers had commented that 1/6 of the city is still too large for the business he operates. And not only that, for those small local curbside recyclers who have customers who love them, they would have customers in all 6 zones, so they would be losing, those customers that they have a relationship with. So that was another.
Just quick follow-up then. And I know there's some of that to be worked out, but when you say that the potential is they keep their current customers, the rate that we would be charging for this is likely to be quite a bit less than they currently charge their customers, though. How would that be dealt with?
That is correct, and that was discussed that.
So it's not, it's probably not feasible for them to.
No, that the way that we discussed it is we would pay the difference.
Really?
If I can clarify, what our expectation when we finish with this is that we would end up with a single vendor, and how the vendor works out the relationship with the subcontractors is up. They need to propose that. So the city's proposal may be that we absorb the difference of what we have to pay the small, but other other proposers may work out other very ingenious, creative solutions that we haven't thought of yet.
Okay.
But it'll be a single vendor for us.
I think, Commissioner Carter, that's a very good question. We don't know the answer to it.
Sure.
I think we're basically saying, we recognize the issue, that we've got a lot of hardworking, smaller recyclers. We don't know what the answer is. We're basically saying, let's see what the responses suggest, and then we'll look at it as we get it back.
Great. Thanks.
Other questions? Thank you. Good presentation. Public comment? Commission discussion?
I'll jump in here.
Go ahead.
I can't, I've expressed my thanks numerous times, but I'll take this opportunity to do so one more time. Solid Waste Division, utilities, thank you so much for all the hard work, and this is great. This RFP gets it, everything that we're talking about for so long. We were just talking about how many hours on the Northeast Sector Plan. I think we topped that for sure on the Solid Waste Task Force and other meetings going on past this, and the amount of work that the city staff has put on this has been incredible. This RFP does get it. I mean, so many of the issues that we talked about, and I really like the creative solution on dealing with the private haulers. I think that's so important, and that was like the one downside, to all of this. Knowing that we need this, but worrying about the good folks, Armand there, and others, who are out in our community, trying to make a living like I am as a small businessman, and so I appreciate that we're I don't know, that it didn't occur to me before that we could do it this way, and so it's nice to see that sort of solution come up, so that's great. Ultimately, right now in Lawrence, we do have this network of folks who are doing it. It's been in place for years. We've had a lot of different opportunities for folks to recycle. We're not doing enough. What we're doing now is not getting at the recycling rate that we need to. And all the research and all the meetings and all the other examples from communities and the data came back and said this is the way to make it work, to get our recycling rate up to where it should be in Lawrence, Kansas. But obviously we have to make sure that the costs aren't prohibitive, so this is the next step that we have to determine that. So we'll put this out there, we'll get some creative RFPs, we'll see what the city can do it for as well, and determine whether the benefits outweigh the costs on this one, and we'll move forward. And so many years from now, maybe we'll actually have a recycling program in Lawrence. It's just phenomenal just looking at the dates. But anyway, I believe this is a great step. We've got to figure out what the costs are, and we'll hopefully be able to move forward. Motion to.
Second.
Motion by Cromwell, seconded by Carter, to include all the items listed on the screen. All fair say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries 5-0. Is there anyone here tonight to make a public comment under the public comment section? Because we're going to adjourn into
Executive session.
executive session. See no one here that wants to make public comment tonight, because that agenda item now is passed. And at this time, I would consider a motion to recess into executive session for approximately 45 minutes for the purpose of consultation with our city attorney.
So moved.
Moved Cromwell, seconded Dever. All fair say aye.
Aye.
Carries 5-0. All right, we're back from executive session, and I have an announcement to make relative to information that was looked at in the executive session. Today, we received information from Kansas Athletics that they are no longer interested in the site that is west of K-10 for their sports village, based on the size of the option at that location. They've indicated in a letter that they have some issues with Title IX sports that they have to reconcile, and 3 of those sports are the soccer, the track, and additionally softball. They need to build a softball field, and they didn't feel there was enough land there at their disposal to do that properly. They are now looking and want to pursue purchasing, not the athletics department, but the Endowment Association, Fairway LC site that is at the north side of Mercado. In this proposal that they have offered to us by letter form, they are asking us and inviting us to be partners with them at that site. We believe that that may be of benefit to the city of Lawrence to continue that relationship with KU in terms of having a sports village. And so we are interested in looking at that with them in terms of co-locating with them. So we are going to ask staff to put on the agenda next week the opportunity for us to join Kansas Athletics on the east side of K-10 as opposed to the original site we were looking at on the west side of K-10. Do you like to add anything to that, Mr. City Manager?
No, Mayor, thank you for that information. The only thing I would add is that we have received annexation and rezoning requests for the Farewell LC tracts of property. I think the planning office got that yesterday. So we'll try and work to get more information on that site and more information about this proposal, and we'll talk about that next week. And we'll also then have the west of K-10 rezonings on your agenda for consideration as well.
Okay. I have nothing else to add to my comments at this time regarding the proposed site. Next item on the agenda, we've already covered public comment. Future agenda items, please.
Don't have anything, Mayor and Commissioners, to add to that. I think we're working our way through a number of those items. I'll be talking with you, Mayor, about some of those other items that you see down on that list that we probably want to try and schedule. There's obviously some interest, for example, in the rental registration. Some of that we might want to forecast when we would put that on.
And do we know how downtown Lawrence is doing with their marker sign?
I have not heard from them. That's a good question. I'll follow up and find out. I know that we put the ball back in their court to provide us with a written communication when I met with them. So I'll find out where that is.
Good. Other comments on agenda?
No, sir.
All right. And any commission items this evening?
Nope.
Okay.
And next, calendar, plethink
Commissioners, if you could consider, I tried to forecast this. If we could, obviously consider, I think we want to obviously cancel the meetings on Christmas and New Year's Day. What we'd like to do is have a short meeting on Thursday, January the 3rd. I picked 9 in the morning. We can do it 5 in the afternoon, whatever's convenient. Again, it's just going to be bill paying and consent agenda items. We usually end up having to have some business that needs to be conducted. We obviously pay our vendors and then have you kind of after the fact approve those claims, but a lot of times there's a contract or a bid award or something like that that needs to get moving, so we'd like to meet that week if at all possible.
And
so our suggestion is January the 3rd on Thursday.
And I'll be here at that time. Is anyone?
Fine with me.
Okay. 2, 3. All right. And then we're going to cancel the other 2 on the So the 18th will be our last regularly scheduled one.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Oh, sounds good to me. Cancel a couple meetings. Merry Christmas. Any other calendar items?
A lot of things going on, so be sure and let us know if there's tickets we need to get for you or any questions